Good afternoon. Welcome to the weekly livestock market update. I am Brownfield anchor reporter Megan Grebner. With us, as always, is University of Missouri's Scott Brown. I had too much coffee today. Good afternoon, Scott.
Good afternoon, Megan.
All right. So kind of an interesting week, a heavy week this week with reports, not a heavy week next week with reports. So today we're going to focus specifically on trade and demand and supply and demand. And next week we'll take a turn to talk about consumer demand and domestic demand there. Sound good?
That sounds great.
All right. So let's recap what happened this week in the markets to kick things off.
Yeah, this week in cash cattle, they were down 70 cents for this week. And if we look at those feeder cattle markets, they were anywhere from steady to $3 higher this week. On the future side, the February live cattle futures contract was down 75 cents, while the January feeder cattle contract was up $1.20. We did see lower choice box beef prices this week. They were down $6.10. Ribs, chucks, and rounds were all significantly lower relative to last week. On the hog side of the equation, cash barrel goat prices were $1 higher this week. The February lean hog futures contract was down about 60 cents this week. We did see an increase in the pork head value. It was up $1.55. That was really what was stronger ham and belly prices leading the way.
Gosh, it's really been interesting watching what's going on with the hog prices. Nice to see a positive note, at least a little bit this week, but they've really been struggling for the last few weeks.
They have, and I keep saying, it looks like we're going to be tighter in terms of pork supplies for the first couple of quarters at least of 2022. So could there be some price strength coming? I keep thinking we might find some, but that's not where markets have been the last couple of weeks at least.
All right, let's take a look at those slaughter numbers. As we take a look at this week, how are things faring compared to a week ago?
Yeah, if we start on the with cattle slaughter this week for the week ending December 11th, 668,000 head of cattle estimated to be slaughtered. That's actually down 8,000 head from where we were a week ago, and it's up 4,000 head from where we were a year ago. On the hog side, a little lighter run this week, 2.601 million head of hogs to be slaughtered. That's down 56,000 from where we were a week ago, and 154,000 below where we were a year ago at this time.
How do we anticipate these? I mean, we're coming into a couple of back-to-back holiday weeks. Do we maybe expect to see a little bit more slaughter leading up to those? As we know, we'll have some extended holiday periods and shutdowns there.
So I assume, Megan, we're probably going to see a pretty heavy run next week, given the following 2 weeks will be short. And, we all have talked immensely about the labor shortages, and I have a hunch the labor force and the meat processing business is going to certainly want some time off here over the Christmas and New Year's holidays. So my expectation could be a pretty heavy run next week, anticipating then those shorter runs the following two.
Talk about resilience in that sector of the ag industry, being able to bounce back on the slaughter numbers compared to where we were during and how things looked really during the heat and the height of the pandemic. Yeah.
So it is amazing. And again, you look at these runs, and I'll keep saying, you look at year to date, hog slaughter down 2.2%. It does remind us that we're tightening on the supply side. All could be helpful for higher prices as we look ahead.
Speaking about and talking about resilience and an ability to rebound, let's talk monthly trade data. And 2021 continues to be pretty impressive, especially on the beef side of things.
Yeah. So exports have been very strong as we look at what's been happening through October. Beef exports in October were up 7.5% relative to a year ago, but up nearly 50% in terms of value relative to where we were a year ago. And of course, we can answer the majority of why that's happening with one word: China.
I was going to ask.
So we certainly have seen that strength be helpful. Whether that can continue, and again, I'll keep saying, I think the Chinese have some demand for higher quality beef, but I also will remind us that looks like Australia is going to be back in higher levels of beef production in 2022. So do we lose some market share there? We'll wait and see. We're we're certainly going to talk about another record of beef exports on an annual basis when we get done with the end of the year. On the pork side, so we were down 7% in October in terms of pork exports. We can answer that question with one word as well: China.
China.
So it certainly softened as we've looked at 2021. On the value side, we're down 3.5% in terms of export value. Again, the positive side of the pork story is Mexico. Thank goodness, strength continues to happen in Mexico. We hit a new monthly high of nearly 84,000 metric tons this month, or the month of October. So that certainly helped some of the reduction that we're seeing on the China side of the equation.
So I also want to ask, I mean, we talk about those other markets playing a role. Obviously, that's a huge part of that conversation. When we look at what's happened this year, are we seeing specifically, I think about markets like the Philippines and the work that's been done to make that a more profitable and positive trading relationship?
Yeah, so it is paying off, so I remind us, all these markets have to start small and grow. And frankly, starting small is not as bad as we need annual growth every year as we, think about how those markets grow. More growth than exports, that gives us hey, we've exported another X million pounds of pork. So, or beef for that matter as well. So it's important that we talk about long-term growth in those markets. If it's a one and done, it's great that we got the one, but then we come back the following year and get a little more concerned.
How do we set those goals a little bit higher for the next year, right?
That's right. It's no different than technology adoption. We just have to stay on course and keep finding all the new markets.
As we wrap things up today, let's take a look at supply and demand numbers from the USDA. A little bit of a snoozer as we take a look at that report this week.
That's right. We didn't get a lot of big changes out of WASDE. From a livestock perspective, a couple things that stick out to me. Number one, although USDA didn't make a big change in terms of 2022 meat production, as I was doing a little bit of the calculation, it just reminds me that for 2022, we might actually see meat production down relative to 2021. If that happens at the end of the day, that'll be the first decline in the combination of beef, pork, and chicken production since 2014. So our discussion about higher prices, we're going to tighten meat supplies. Now, we're talking about tightening meat supplies from what's a pretty large level that we'll have laid out there in 2021. But again, some positive news. I guess if you look at the real changes that we saw, so as fed cattle prices, cash fed cattle prices have been moving higher, USDA's come back and raised their 2022 estimate to $1.35 a pound, so up $5 from where they were last month. That's all a positive. On the feed cost side of the equation, not a big change. Corn prices unchanged, but they did raise that soybean meal price by $5 a ton in the December report.
Scott, that will do it for us this week. As we look ahead to next week, we're going to talk domestic demand and consumer demand as well.
That's right. And a little bit of consumer price discussion next we've got more information laying out there that we can talk about in terms of what lies ahead for consumers in terms of higher prices.
I'm sure it'll be a fantastic discussion. It's ahead into the short holiday weeks.
I can't wait to see you next Friday, Megan.
Scott, it's always great to see you. To have our weekly livestock market update delivered to your email box every Saturday morning, or on Saturday, because sometimes we delay it because we get to see each other in person and do these live, which is fantastic. Go to brownfieldagnnews.com. You can also submit questions and comments there. And for all the great Brownfield podcasts, go to brownfieldagnnews.com/podcast. Have a great weekend. I'm Megan Grebner from Brownfield.